Hi guys, thanks for tuning in to our tutorial video on snake in the grass. Now, snake in the grass is a transition that helps build strength into our upper posterior chain, so that's our upper back, our shoulder region, and also builds opening across the front of the chest. There's two ways that we can practice our snake in the grass. One is through the traditional version where we're staying very close to the earth, and one is in our floating snake in the grass forms. And I'll show you what both of those look like. This is a great way to build strength, mobility, and flexibility in the spine, especially if you're looking to build more fluid transitions in your body. To begin, we actually start this transition in either cobra or upward facing dog. Starting in our baby cobra, instead of lifting right back up into downward facing dog, we lower the chest all the way down. We push the palms forward and we cinch the hips up and back, coming into what's called Anahatasana. This is our puppy pose. Our hearts are open, our tailbone is lifted, but our belly is super strong. It's cinching in to help protect the low back and sacrum. Now, to continue our transition, we keep pushing the palms forward and dragging the hips back as we squeeze the elbows in and let the forearms drop down. Now, this looks easy, but it's a lot of opening in the shoulder girdle, in the chest, and a lot of strength in the triceps and the upper back. Keep pushing nice and slow all the way back to child's pose. Try to keep the forearms down the entire time. As we come out of child's pose, we round the spine and peel up cat pose. It's that rounding spine that actually picks our elbows up so that we can come into straight arms. And then dropping the belly into cow pose. Cow pose leads us back into downward facing dog. Let's move through that again. Roll forward, lower down, cobra position, lower the chest, squeeze it back, keeping that low belly strong, pausing in Anahatasana, our puppy stretch. Keep those elbows squeezing in as you continue to drag it back nice and slow, shifting the hips all the way back, keeping the whole of the forearms down. As you inhale, puff up the upper back, round the spine. That picks up your elbows, all fours, to cow pose, and then keep it going as you send the hips up and back, returning to downward facing dog. Now, a couple things to note. We don't want those elbows splaying out at any point in time. So sometimes we get this chicken wing thing that happens. Try to keep those elbows cinching in through the midline. You may notice that one forearm will drop down and then the other. Try to slow it down, and if you need to, lift up a little bit higher. The lower we are, the more difficult and challenging it's going to be. Ideally, we are trying to see how low can we flow. But if you don't have the opening quite yet to stay super low, just stay up lifting higher. So if this is too much, stay here instead. Now, that typical snake in the grass transition can begin to lead us into what's called our floating snake in the grass transition. Builds a ton of strength in our posterior chain, in our upper back, our triceps, all those muscles that work to support our shoulders. It's a great transition for anybody who's working on inversions, handstands, forearm stands, and arm balances as well. One of my absolute favorite in my practice toolkit. We're going to start in either cobra or upward facing. Now, whether you're in cobra or upward facing, toes are tucking and legs are hovering off the earth. Cobra would have bent elbows, a little bit more strength. Upward facing would have straight arms. From here, just as we do before, we lower down back to the earth. But remember, in this variation, I'm floating. Hips height, I pause through that Anahatasana shape, knees floating above the earth. And then squeezing the elbows in, I drop the forearms down, and then press it all the way back. And instead of child's pose, this time, I'm in dolphin pose. To come out of dolphin and wave back forward, lift the heels, round the spine, and that rounding of the spine and that hinging forward helps to lift the elbows. And then lift the tailbone, shift the hips up and back, down dog. Let's move through it again, and I want to show you what it looks like continuously. variation on snake in the grass is reverse snake in the grass. And it requires a totally different group of strength and muscle engagement. But I really think a great way to help level out your practice is to try to come at your transitions through the opposite direction. So I'll show you what that looks like. So for this, we'll start in our ending position, which would be child's pose with the forearms down. From child's pose with the forearms down, we slide back forward, almost as if we're trying to tap the chin in the chest. Remember, only stay as low as feels safe for you. You might have to lift up higher if you're limited in your shoulder and upper back mobility. So coming forward until that last moment where we pick up the elbows and slide through Anahatasana. And then bringing it all the way forward into baby cobra or upward facing dog. And then our very last way to add on would be our reverse floating snake in the grass transition. So for this, we're actually going to want to start in our ending position, which would be dolphin pose. And this is the highest modification, so I would not try this unless you feel comfortable moving from that snake in the grass transition, hovering the whole time. From our dolphin, moving in reverse, we come forward, coming back into that Anahatasana shape, and then all the way up, cobra or upward facing. The game here is definitely mobility, less about depth of individual postures, less about postural integrity, more about movement and transition integrity. At the end of the day, I think we all want to be able to move better and pain-free, and that's where bringing our attention to the transitions and to the movements is a really helpful way to help balance out and keep our practice safe.